Hi, my name is Emma. I used to be the one they forgot to include in family photos. The laughter still rings in my ears. Not the kind that warms your heart, but the dismissive kind that makes you feel small. The kind that only family knows how to weaponize. It happened last Christmas, right after dinner, when everyone was lounging in the living room with half-empty wine glasses and 2 full stomachs. I had been quiet most of the evening, as usual. I've always been the observer, the one who notices things, like how Mom's smile tightens when my brother mentions money, or how my sister checks her phone whenever I start to speak. "I've been working on something," I said softly during a rare moment of silence. "A long-term plan." My mother looked up from her crossword puzzle, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. "Oh?" she said, in that tone she uses when she's pretending to be interested. "Another one of Emma's plans," my brother chuckled, raising his eyebrows at my stepfather. "Remember when she was going to open that online boutique or write that novel?" My sister didn't even look up from her phone. She hummed, thumbs tapping away at some conversation more important than mine. Before we continue, drop a comment. Where are you watching this from, and what time is it there? I'd love to know how far this story is reaching. It wasn't the first time I'd been invisible. Growing up in our old 2-story colonial house with the peeling white paint, I was always the quiet dreamer, the one who didn't demand much, who listened more than she spoke. When Dad left when I was 9, I became even more of a background figure. I learned to make myself small, to need less, to expect nothing. And when Mom remarried 3 years later, I was just another responsibility, another mouth to feed in my stepfather's new ready-made family. My brother Ryan became the golden child with his football scholarships and booming laugh that filled rooms. My sister Melissa transformed into the family beauty with her perfect hair and carefully curated social media presence. I was just Emma, the one who read books in corners and watched and waited. Through the years, I learned to keep my ideas to myself. I never fought for attention, never begged for validation. But I watched. I learned. I filed away every comment, every snide remark, every moment they dismissed me. Each one was a small paper cut on my heart, barely visible, but stinging all the same. After college, when the economy tanked and apartment prices soared, I moved back home temporarily. That was 4 years ago. I paid rent quietly, $800 a month that disappeared into my stepfather's account without acknowledgement. They forgot I was contributing. I bought groceries when the refrigerator was empty. They assumed it was Mom. I covered the electricity bill the month they almost shut off our power because my stepfather had splurged on a fishing boat instead. No one asked why the lights stayed on. I was used to invisibility. So when I said, softly, that I had a plan, it didn't surprise me that they laughed. What hurt was how quickly they returned to their conversations, like I hadn't spoken at all. My mother asked Ryan about his promotion prospects. Melissa showed everyone the designer purse she'd just treated herself to. My stepfather changed the channel to a football game. I sat there, feeling the familiar ache in my chest, that hollow space where family validation should be. I excused myself to do the dishes. No one offered to help. In the kitchen, I scrubbed, dried cranberry sauce from plates, and listened to their laughter floating in from the living room. It wasn't meant to be cruel, their dismissal. That's what made it worse. They didn't even think about me enough to be intentionally hurtful. That night, in my childhood bedroom that still had the same lavender walls and twin bed, I opened my laptop and checked my accounts. The numbers glowed back at me, a secret constellation only I could see. The startup shares had jumped again. My investments were growing steadily. My side hustle designing websites had brought in another $3,000 this month. I was approaching the milestone I had set for myself 3 years ago, when I first began to understand that the quietest person in the room can also be the most determined. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling, thinking about all the times they had underestimated me. The high school guidance counselor who suggested community college instead of my dream university because it might be more your pace, Emma. My stepfather's dismissive grunt when I graduated with honors in computer science. Too bad that field is so competitive. My mother's concerned frown when I turned down a stable but dead-end job at her friend's insurance company to freelance instead. I just worry about your future, honey. The truth was, I had always had a plan. Not the flighty dreams they accused me of having, but a methodical, step-by-step path forward that I'd been quietly walking for years. While they saw a timid girl who couldn't commit to anything, I was building something they couldn't yet see. The next morning, I made coffee for everyone as usual. My sister rushed through the kitchen in her workout clothes, grabbing a mug without a thank you. My mother absently patted my shoulder as she searched for her car keys. My stepfather grumbled about the bills piling up. I nodded sympathetically, but said nothing about the fact that I had paid the property taxes last quarter when he forgot. "Don't forget family dinner on Sunday," my mother called as she headed out the door. "Melissa's bringing her new boyfriend, the doctor." I nodded and smiled, already knowing I would be the one to cook most of the meal, to set the table, to fade into the background as they fawned over my sister's latest achievement, landing a man with a respectable career. After they all left, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my cooling coffee and opened my laptop again. I had work to do, clients waiting, code to write, investments to check, a house to buy. Yes, a house, the same one we were all living in. I had discovered 3 months ago that my stepfather was behind on the mortgage. Again. The house where I'd grown up, where my father had once tucked me in at night and read me stories about brave girls who saved themselves. It was at risk. Not that anyone had bothered to tell me. I found out when I accidentally opened a final notice meant for him, thinking it was addressed to me. So I made some calls, set some things in motion, created a limited liability company with a nondescript name, made an offer to the bank that they couldn't refuse, given the circumstances. It would take another month to finalize, but soon, this deed would be in my name, mine alone. They didn't need to know. Not yet. Let them think everything was fine, that some miracle had saved them from their own financial mismanagement. Let them continue to laugh at my plans, while I quietly became the foundation beneath their feet. That evening, as I prepared dinner, because no one else would, I moved through the kitchen with a new awareness of the space. Soon, these cabinets would be mine to replace if I wanted. These walls would be mine to paint. This floor would be mine to stand upon and finally, feel solid. My phone pinged with a notification. Another client approved my design. Another deposit pending. Another brick in the wall of my invisible empire. My brother came home, tossing his keys on the counter I had just wiped clean. "What's for dinner?" he asked, not really looking at me. "Lasagna," I replied, sliding the pan into the oven. "Nice," he said, already walking away, already forgetting me. I smiled to myself, a small, secret smile. Let them look past me. Let them underestimate. Let them laugh. They would see me soon enough. Silence became my superpower in the months that followed. I didn't correct them when they thought Uncle Joe had helped with the new refrigerator after the old one died a noisy death. I didn't argue when my sister bragged that her influencer income had paid for her designer bag, even though I knew she had maxed out her credit card, the one I had quietly added to my online account to make minimum payments on when she forgot. I simply paid the credit card balance and watched the numbers grow. My plan wasn't some fantasy, some dream built on wishful thinking. It was calculated, a 10-year blueprint I had drafted late at night while they slept soundly in their beds. Unaware of the financial precipice they stood upon, I had taught myself coding after my shifts at the diner during college. While my classmates partied, I watched tutorials until my eyes burned. I sold my digital art online under a pseudonym, building a following that never knew my real name or Face. I invested small, steady amounts into emerging technologies and watched the market like a hawk, learning patterns where others saw chaos. And when a startup offered me shares instead of cash for designing their user experience, I said yes without hesitation. My family laughed when I mentioned it over dinner one night. Shares? In what? Thin air? My stepfather had joked. That company just went public last month. The house purchase went through without a hitch. The mortgage was transferred to my name through the LLC. My stepfather never read the mail carefully. He just saw that the foreclosure notices had stopped coming and assumed his half-hearted calls to the bank had worked some miracle. No one noticed the change because they never thought I had the means or the will. Emotionally, I began to drift from them. Not in any dramatic way. There was no confrontation, no declaration of independence. I simply started seeing them more clearly, from a distance that grew with my financial security. I began to see them for who they were. Not monsters, but careless, entitled, fragile in their need to feel superior. Sometimes in quiet moments, I even felt sorry for them. They had no idea how precarious their comfortable lives had become, or how much they depended on the daughter they barely noticed. I started seeing my value not through their eyes, but through the steady growth of my choices. Each decision I made without seeking their approval felt like oxygen to my lungs. Each milestone I reached in secret was a private victory. I began to sleep more soundly at night, knowing that regardless of what they thought of me, I was becoming someone I respected. And when the startup's IPO made me a silent millionaire, I didn't quit my job. I didn't buy a new car or book a luxury vacation. I just paid off the last of the family debts, in cash, quietly. My brother's student loans that he complained about at every family gathering, settled. The tax lien on my stepfather's fishing boat that he tried to hide from my mother, cleared. My sister's maxed out credit cards that kept her awake at night, zeroed out. I did it all anonymously, through careful financial maneuvers that couldn't be traced back to me. Spring turned to summer, and I watched my family move through life with a new lightness I had gifted them without their knowledge. My mother stopped checking the mailbox anxiously for bills. My stepfather's perpetual frown softened. My brother started talking about buying a condo. My sister took our mother on a spa weekend to celebrate life, as if their newfound financial peace had been their doing all along. I said nothing. I just observed, like I always had. But something was changing inside me. The resentment that had fueled me for so long was slowly transforming into something else. Not forgiveness, exactly. Their casual cruelty had cut too deep for that, but understanding. They were products of their own insecurities, their own fears. Their dismissal of me had never really been about me at all. One Tuesday evening in late July, I sat on the back porch watching fireflies rise from the lawn. The same lawn where my father had once pushed me on a tire swing before he left us for his new family, his new life. The same lawn I now owned, deed and all. My mother came outside and sat beside me, something she rarely did. We sat in silence for a while, the humidity wrapping around us like a blanket. "You've seemed different lately," she said finally, not looking at me, but out at the gathering darkness. "More settled." I nodded, unsure what to say. Had she finally noticed me? Or just the absence of my usual hunger for validation? "I know, we haven't always," she began, then stopped. "I know it hasn't been easy for you, being the quiet one." I turned to look at her then. In the fading light, I could see the fine lines around her eyes, the silver threading through her hair. She looked older than I remembered, more vulnerable. "It's okay," I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. I found my own way. She smiled, a small, sad smile, and patted my hand before rising to go back inside. I wondered if, in some unspoken way, she knew what I had done. If she had sensed the shift in power, even if she couldn't name it. That night, I dreamed of my childhood self, small and wide-eyed, always watching from doorways, always listening from the stairs. In the dream, I took her hand and led her forward, into the center of the room, into the light. "You are seen," I told her. "You matter." I woke with tears on my cheeks, but a strange peace in my heart. The revelation wasn't dramatic. It was casual. It happened on a Sunday in August, almost 8 months after they had laughed at my plan at Christmas dinner. Mom called a family meeting in the living room. Her voice had that tight quality it got when she was trying not to panic. My brother sprawled on the sofa, annoyed at missing some game on TV. My sister perched on the armchair, scrolling through her phone. My stepfather stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, face grim. "There's something strange going on," Mom said, clutching a piece of paper. "I got this in the mail today. It's about the house. It says we're renting from something called Quiet Waters LLC, that the house was sold months ago. I think someone is trying to scam us." My brother sat up straight, suddenly alert. "What? Let me see that." He snatched the paper from her hand, eyes scanning the document. "This looks official, too official." "It can't be," my stepfather blustered, his face reddening. "I would know if the house had been sold. I'm the one who deals with the mortgage." My sister finally looked up from her phone, worry creasing her perfect forehead. Could it be identity? Theft? "I read about this scam where—" "It's mine," I said simply. The room went silent. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me, sitting quietly in the corner chair where I'd always sat, the one slightly apart from the family circle. "What's yours?" my brother asked, confusion coloring his voice. "The house," I replied, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "I bought it, through Quiet Waters LLC, 8 months ago." The silence deepened. I could hear the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the distant sound of a lawnmower from down the street. "You?" my stepfather asked, almost laughing. Again. But something in my eyes stopped him. "That's not possible. You don't have that kind of money." I met his gaze evenly. "I do, actually. I've had it for some time now." "But how?" my mother whispered, sinking onto the sofa beside my brother. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had both dreaded and longed for. The moment of being truly seen. "I've been working on my plan for years," I said, keeping my voice calm, factual. "The one you all laughed at. I taught myself to code. I invested. I saved. I built a client base. And when a startup I worked with went public, well, things changed." "So you bought our house?" my sister asked incredulously. "Why would you do that?" "It was going into foreclosure," I said, looking directly at my stepfather, whose face had drained of color. "No one told me, but I found out anyway. I couldn't let it happen. This is my home too." "You had no right," my stepfather began, but his protest sounded hollow even to his own ears. I could tell. "I had every right," I replied softly. "Just like I had the right to pay off Ryan's student loans, and Melissa's credit cards, and the tax lien on your boat." I nodded toward my stepfather. "And the back property taxes, and the new refrigerator, and 100 other expenses over the years." They stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps they were. "You?" my brother repeated, the word hanging in the air between us. "You've been—" "What? Supporting us?" "Yes," I said simply. "I've been covering all the bills, for years, the trips, the upgrades, the car maintenance. Your lifestyle, I funded it." The room went still. My mother's hand covered her mouth, her eyes wide with Shock or shame, I couldn't tell which. My sister had gone pale, her phone forgotten in her lap. My brother looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. My stepfather simply stared, his certainty crumbling before my eyes. "Why didn't you say anything?" my mother finally asked, her voice small. I looked at her, really looked at her, wanting her to understand. "Would you have believed me? Any of you? When have you ever taken what I say seriously?" No one answered. The truth of it hung in the air, undeniable. "I don't understand," my sister said, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "If you had all this money, why stay here? Why live like this?" She gestured vaguely around, her at the modest living room with its secondhand furniture and faded curtains. It was a fair question, one I had asked myself many times over the past year as my bank accounts grew and my emotional reserves dwindled. "Because this is my home," I said simply, "and you're my family. Even when you couldn't see me, I saw you. Even when you didn't value me, I valued you." My brother ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mix of confusion and dawning comprehension. "So all those times when things mysteriously worked out, when the bills got paid and no one knew how?" "That was me," I confirmed. "I don't know what to say," my mother whispered. "You don't have to say anything," I replied. And I meant it. I hadn't done this for gratitude or recognition. Not really. I had done it because beneath all the hurt and invisibility, I loved them. Imperfectly, perhaps. Resentfully at times. But love had been there, tangled up with everything else. My stepfather cleared his throat. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "So, what happens now? Are you kicking us out?" The question stung, a reminder of how little they understood me even now. "No," I said firmly. "This is still your home. I don't want anyone to leave." I took a deep breath. But things need to change. "What kind of changes?" my brother asked cautiously. "Fair ones," I said. "Everyone contributes what they can. Everyone respects everyone else. No more dismissing ideas or dreams because they don't look like your own. No more invisible labor, emotional or financial." They didn't apologize. Not really. There were no tearful embraces or dramatic reconciliations. Just awkward glances and a quiet dinner that night, each of us lost in our own thoughts. But that was enough for now. The power had shifted. The truth had been spoken. The invisible girl had finally been seen. The following weeks were strange, an adjustment period for all of us. My sister started asking my advice about her finances. My brother offered to mow the lawn without being asked. My stepfather, perhaps the most shaken by the revelation, retreated at first, then gradually began making small gestures, fixing the squeaky stare that had bothered me for years, bringing home my favorite coffee. My mother tried the hardest. I caught her watching me sometimes, a look of wonder and regret on her face. One evening she came to my room, a space they had all previously treated as if it had a revolving door, entering without knocking, borrowing without asking. This time, she knocked. "Can we talk?" she asked, hovering in the doorway. I nodded, setting aside my laptop. She sat on the edge of my bed, smoothing the comforter with nervous hands. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about not being seen." She swallowed hard. "I want you to know that I see you now, Emma. I'm sorry it took all this for that to happen." I felt something shift inside me, a door unlocking that I hadn't known was still closed. "Thank you," I said quietly. I was so focused on Ryan and Melissa because they were louder, more demanding. "You were always so self-sufficient, even as a child. I think I mistook that for not needing anything from me." Her eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. Everyone needs to be seen. I reached for her hand, surprised at how natural it felt after so many years of emotional distance. Yes, I agreed. Everyone does. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken years between us. Your father would be proud of you, she said finally. He always said you were the one who saw the whole board while the rest of us were just moving pieces around. The mention of my father, something she rarely did, caught me off guard. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. You think so? She nodded. I know so. You're like him in all the best ways. The quiet strength, the long-term vision. She squeezed my hand. But you're kinder than he was. He would have let us crash and burn. You saved us from ourselves. I hadn't thought of it that way before. That perhaps my invisibility had given me a power he never had. The ability to see, clearly without being blinded by pride or the need for recognition. That night, I lay awake thinking about the strange path my life had taken. How the very qualities that had made me invisible had ultimately made me strong. How the hurt of being overlooked had forged in me a determination to be underestimated. No more. In the morning, I made a decision. I called a family meeting of my own. They gathered in the kitchen, all of them on time, all of them attentive in a way they had never been before. I laid out papers on the table, financial statements, property documents, investment portfolios. I want to teach you, I said simply. All of you. How to manage money, how to invest, how to build something lasting. My stepfather looked skeptical, old habits dying hard. You want to teach me about finances? I met his gaze steadily. Yes, I do, because I've succeeded where you've struggled. Not because I'm smarter or better, but because I learned different lessons. I watched, I listened, I planned. He held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded, a gesture of acceptance that felt monumental. My sister leaned forward, suddenly interested. Could you help me start investing too? I've been thinking I should be smarter about my influencer income. Of course, I said, feeling an unexpected warmth at her request. My brother shifted uncomfortably. I never thanked you for the student loans. That was huge. You're welcome, I said, meaning it. My mother watched us all, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Something was healing, here, slowly but surely. Not just between me and them, but within each of us. Old patterns being rewired, new possibilities emerging. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need them to grovel or beg for forgiveness. I just needed them to see me, really see me. And now they did. Over the next few months, our family dynamics shifted in subtle but significant ways. We started having weekly financial meetings where I taught them what I knew. My brother used his sales skills to help me network with potential clients. My sister, with her social media savvy, helped me rebrand my freelance business. Even my stepfather, once he got over his initial resistance, offered valuable insights from his years of entrepreneurial attempts. What not to do was sometimes as instructive as what to do. The house gradually transformed as well. We painted the walls together one weekend, choosing colors as a family. We replaced the tired furniture piece by piece, each of us contributing ideas and effort. The space began to feel like it belonged to all of us. Not just in legal terms, but in emotional ones too. I still wake early and walk the halls of my own home in those quiet morning hours when everyone else is asleep. Their voices are softer around me now, more cautious, more respectful. And while I never needed their respect to value myself, I let it come slowly, like spring thawing old ice. Sometimes, when we're all gathered in the living room, my mother working on her beading projects, my stepfather reading his history books, my siblings arguing good-naturedly about some TV show, I catch myself feeling a sense of peace I never thought possible. Not perfect happiness, I'm not naive enough to expect that, but a quiet contentment, a belonging that I had always craved but never thought I'd achieve. Last week, at Sunday dinner, I mentioned casually that I was thinking of starting a nonprofit to teach financial literacy to young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. There was a moment of silence, and I braced myself for the old patterns to reassert themselves. The dismissive chuckles, the changed subjects, the glazed eyes. Instead, my stepfather nodded thoughtfully. "You'd be good at that," he said. "You have a way of explaining complex things simply." My sister immediately pulled out her phone, not to ignore me, but to research similar organizations. "We should look at what's already out there, see where the gaps are." My brother started brainstorming names out loud, each suggestion more enthusiastic than the last. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you," I managed to say. Later, as I loaded the dishwasher, no longer alone, as my brother was helping now, he bumped my shoulder gently with his. "Remember that Christmas when you said you had a plan, and we all laughed?" I nodded, the memory still carrying a sting, but a duller one now. "I'm never going to underestimate you again, sis," he said quietly. "Never." I smiled at him. This brother who had overlooked me for so long, but was trying so hard now to see. "Good," I replied, "because I'm just getting started." And I am. The quiet girl who moved through life unseen now stands in the light of her own making. The plan that drew their laughter has built a foundation strong enough to support us all. And while the path was lonely and painful at times, I wouldn't change. It taught me to believe in myself when no one else did. It taught me that sometimes the power of silence lies not in what remains unsaid, but in what you're building while no one is watching. Now they watch. Now they listen. Now they see. Some plans don't need applause to succeed. They need patience, resilience, and the courage to keep going when no one believes in your vision but you, and the respect that follows a revelation. That is the sweetest validation of all.